I've been receiving a lot of questions lately about hostile work environment and realistically what it is, what it looks like, and at what point can you actually quit your job because of it. Hi, my name is Adam Juratovac and I'm an employment lawyer right here in San Jose, California at Juratovac Law. And let's talk about hostile work environments. So, hostile work environment is a term that you're going to see everywhere. If you Google it, millions of terms and millions of web pages are going to pop up. If you start talking to people who are harassed at work, they're going to start talking about their mental health declining, and they're going to be talking about the fact that they're in a hostile work environment or harassing work environment. So, what is a hostile work environment under California law, and what is a hostile work environment generally? So first we have to talk about hostile work environment. Now technically the term hostile work environment is not in any California statutes because that term was coined and in use by the superior courts in the state of California. For example, when someone is mentioning a hostile work environment, what they're really meaning is a harassing work environment where they're getting harassed so frequently that it becomes hostile, right? And when you talk about hostile work environments, people's mental anguish is going to be increasing. Their depression is going to be increasing. And you're going to see a lot more anxiety that's work related because of their environment. So if the term hostile work environment isn't categorized and it isn't defined by the statutes, what really is it? So we already talked about that it's a harassing work environment. Now, what type of harassment are we actually talking about? Are we talking about the harassment that someone just harasses you and bullies you because they don't like the color shirt you're wearing? No, we're not talking about that type of harassing work environment. Anytime you look at a hostile work environment, the harassment also needs to be illegal or unlawful. So are we saying that any type of harassment is illegal? No, that's absolutely not what we're saying. And actually, that's a really common theme when people are thinking that they're in a hostile work environment and they're stressing about it. But realistically, that's not what the case law says. So what a hostile work environment really is, it's a harassing work environment. And the harassment needs to be illegal or unlawful harassment. And what that means is if someone doesn't like the baseball team that you enjoy and you wear a hat for, and they start bullying you because of that, and they start bullying you at work because of that, is that illegal? Well, number one, is that wrong? Absolutely, it's wrong. But number two, is it illegal and unlawful? In the state of California, probably not. Because in order for harassment to be illegal, you need to be harassed on one of the protected characteristics in the state of California. For example, your race, your sex, your ethnicity, diversity, LGBTQ status, right? So when you're harassed for those particular reasons, then it could be unlawful harassment. So before we start going off on like the standard of when you actually get to a hostile work environment, let me start talking to you about a lot of common stories that I hear from people calling into our offices who are insistent that they work in a hostile work environment. So one of the things that I hear a lot about is nepotism, where an employee starts talking about their manager hiring and promoting other people within that manager's social circle or family network instead of the individual who actually deserves the raise or who deserves the promotion. In the state of California, nepotism is legal. It's okay. Now, there's a lot of other issues that become presented when you have a company that's based on nepotism. So some companies do have anti-nepotism work policies, but as a general theme in the state of California, I don't really see too many of those. So nepotism is legal. So if you're complaining about being a hostile work environment because you're not receiving preferential treatment because of nepotism, because you're not related to the boss, if those are the only factors, then that technically is not illegal harassment. It could be harassment, but not illegal harassment. Another thing I hear about is favoritism. Now that kind of goes along with nepotism, which we just previously talked about. However, favoritism could be a little harder to see. This is where you see a manager who could be promoting their social circle and also giving preferential treatment or preferential duties to people who they enjoy and people who they like. However, if the only reason why they're giving someone else better duties than you, or they're giving someone else better hours than you is because they like the individual more and it has nothing to do with the protected characteristics, again, that's not unlawful harassment. It's wrong, but it's not unlawful because it doesn't have to do with a protected characteristic in the state of California. Another thing I hear a lot about is arguing. I hear about coworkers who are talking trash about other coworkers, who are starting gossip, who are starting rumors. And, that could really impact a person's mental well-being and mental health and anxiety when they start understanding and realizing that everyone in the office around them is talking poorly about them. Unfortunately, one of the things we have to look at is, are your coworkers talking poorly about you because of a protected characteristic, or are they talking poorly about you just because they're bullying you and they're bullying? Because if they're just bullying you, unfortunately, that's not illegal. It's wrong, and you should definitely report it to HR. You should definitely report it to your employer and make sure that's noted down. But if it's just regular bullying, not having to do with a protected characteristic, then unfortunately that sucks, but it's also legal. Now, what does a hostile work environment look like if, I just mentioned all these things that it's not, right? So, for example, let's just say that you are a female working in a male-dominated industry. Then all of a sudden, all the males periodically over a period of time, they start saying things that could be seen as discriminatory or harassing against women. So they could be talking about gender roles. They could be calling you nicknames. They could be using different derogatory terms that people usually use when referencing women. That could be harassing. And because you can see that all of those harassments, all of that contact, all that communication has to do with a protected characteristic, has to do with based on gender, based on sex. Now, all of those harassing activities, all of those harassing communications, that is illegal harassment because it's protected. So check it out. We just talked about harassment, right? So before we can get to hostile work environment, we have to get past the harassment bridge. So when you're looking at harassment in the state of California, what the standard is the conduct needs to be either A, severe, or B, pervasive. Harassing conduct needs to be severe or pervasive in order to be unlawful. Now, what does severe and pervasive means? Number one, severe. Severe means one act. One act is enough to constitute an unlawful activity, and that's enough to start a lawsuit over. Now, when we're looking at that one act, when it has to do with women or sexual harassment, think about a touching. Think about a certain activity that occurs in front of a large room of people that has to do with illegal harassing conduct, right? It has to be calling you out based on a protected characteristic in front of others. Now, when we're looking at severe and severity of a certain action, we look at the time, place, and manner of that action. So it is a balancing test, but we're also evaluating all the factors that are happening around you. Now, a lot of the times, you don't have one big act. There's a lot of little small acts that occur over a period of time that individually don't seem like very much. But if you string 5, 10, 15, 20 together of these little harassing moments that chip away until you look at a long enough period of time and you see that one string flowing all the way through the first harassing moment to the last one, and they all relate to harassment based on a protected characteristic, now that is also unlawful. Now, when I say pervasive, we're talking about it can't be like one action, but like 2, 3, 5, 10, right? Pervasive means there's small little acts that occur everywhere, all throughout your employment. Now, even if it's not severe acts, if you string enough small things together, you'll eventually get to that point where you do have a cause of action for illegal harassment. Now, hostile work environment and harassment are overlapping, but at the same time, they are different. So when we're looking at a hostile work environment, I'm thinking about multiple severe actions against an individual that constitute as illegal harassment under California law. Now, let me say that again in regular words. When I'm looking at a hostile work environment, I need to see more than just pervasive harassment. I just need to see more than just like slight comments once every 4 months. When I'm thinking about a hostile work environment, I'm thinking about a work environment that is both discriminating, meaning it's discriminating against you because of one of those protected characteristics, and it's also harassing, meaning that the employees and management are harassing you for similar or that same protected characteristic. In order for you to quit your job and to say that you're constructively terminated, this is the standard. The standard is the environment that you're in needs to be so illegally harassing, so illegally discriminatory that no other reasonable Californian would be able to withstand that job. And the reasonable Californian would have no other choice than to quit. When you're in a harassing work environment, when you're in a hostile work environment that's illegally harassing, you can't just quit your job because you feel harassed. That's not the standard. You have to prove and we have to show is that work environment was so bad that the average Californian would have no other choice but to quit. Now, this is what you have to do in order to think about that. If you're in an environment and your environment is so bad where you feel like you have no other choice than to quit, you have to put someone else in your shoes. Put a different Californian in your shoes and ask yourself that same question. If this individual were in my shoes in this work environment, would they quit or would they be able to withstand it? Now, some of the cases that I'm going to read might be shocking, so trigger warning, if you get triggered easily, get out of here. But there are cases where individual employees get called the N-word and who get called other racially derogatory terms multiple times, and then they quit their job, right? And then they quit. I can't tell you how many cases where an individual will quit their job after being subject to a harassing work environment and then start a lawsuit, right? And when some of these cases come down to the jury, what the jury sometimes finds is, A, yes, illegal harassment was present. There was definitely harassment based on a protected characteristic. Number two, the harassment wasn't so bad that an average Californian would have to quit their job. So although you might win the harassment battle, a lot of times people lose the constructive termination battle, which is another reason why I say sometimes it's better to be fired than it is to quit your job. And if you have any questions about that, I'm going to link it. One thing is that I'm always going to tell every employee who's being harassed, you should talk to other people about your harassment and ask them what their beliefs are and would they quit their job if that same thing was happening to them. And you should ask a bunch of people that you trust. Don't just ask people who are going to gas you up and tell you that you're in the worst situation ever, because those people aren't helpful. Those people aren't going to be putting in the work for the next 3 or 4 years building a case and going to trial to prove that your environment was so harassing you had no other choice than to quit. They're just trying to support their friend in that moment. So it's really important, if you're in this situation, for you to contact an employment lawyer in the state or jurisdiction that you're in to help you analyze it. Now, when you have the lawyer analyzing your situation, number one, you want to talk to them to see what their experience is in employment law, and then you also want to test a little bit of their knowledge when it comes to case law. Because the thing about employment law is, you're going to hear this all the time, is there are a lot of rules. If you are in one of these situations where you're in a harassing work environment or you're being illegally discriminated against, my one piece of legal advice to you is talk to an attorney and get a lawyer. Because when you look on the internet, you're going to find the same definition over and over and over again. And the thing about a lot of these articles on these websites, especially these lawyers' websites, they're not going to include the case law in the article. They're just going to include like a brief summary of what's going on. And when you're looking at harassment, especially when it's pervasive harassment, there's so many factors involved. There are so many things that you need to evaluate and analyze in order for you to get to that determination that there is illegal and unlawful harassment there. So when you're looking at just like a 3-paragraph summary or a blog post, that's not going to be the most educational for you and the most beneficial, because that also might continue gassing you up and increasing your toughness and your confidence in your case without actually giving you a proper analysis. So it is currently at 9:48 p.m. on a Tuesday night, and I just wanted to pop in here, give you a little bit of legal education about hostile work environment and harassment. So if you like this, please encourage me to make more videos by clicking all the buttons that you see everywhere and subscribing. And also, please feel free to tune into the next one. I'll see you there.